Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the 25th GF Ideas India webinar, Making D2C Work for You, a fireside chat with Arjun Vaidya. Just as an introduction to the work that we do at the Good Food Institute India, we are a part of a global network of nonprofits that's working towards advancing the smart protein sector in India. So this is plant-based, fermentation-derived, and cultivated protein. We do this across three main pillars of business, science, and policy. The business pillar involves both innovation as well as corporate engagement, wherein in the innovation team, we help build out the early stage startup ecosystem in smart protein in India, while the corporate engagement team deals with the larger players that are looking to align with the sector. Our science and tech team of PhD scientists work to advance research and unlock funding for the space, while our policy team helps build out the regulatory pathways for the sector in India. Getting to the GF Ideas India community, we are now nearly 1,000-member community actively tracking the space in India. This includes multiple stakeholder cohorts of entrepreneurs, investors, students, researchers, scientists, as well as other value chain stakeholders. We are a growing community that is now becoming a sort of self-serviced one, wherein opportunity discovery as well as networking is becoming easier to flourish in this space. And we try to make sure that you are well placed once you're in the community to receive the latest updates and resources within the space. Over the past few months, we've also been working to revive the GF Ideas India webinar series across business as well as sci-tech teams. We have been doing a lot of needs mapping within the community to understand which topics would be of most impact to you. And one such topic that came up a lot is channel strategy and scaling up and D2C. So to answer all your questions, we've roped in the domain expert himself, Arjun Vaidya, founder at Dr. Vaidya's venture lead at Whirl West, as well as Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia, to explore this sort of exciting intersection between D2C and smart protein. Over to you, Arjun, to just give us a brief on your journey so far and what has interested you about the space.
Hey, Devika. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, big fan of the good work you guys do and this space as well. So I'll maybe spend just a little bit of time on my background and why I'm so excited about D2C space in general, and then we can deep dive into the plant protein space. So I worked actually in a space not so close, but not so far away as well. I built a health and wellness business. So many people would have read a little bit about our story and Dr. Vaidya, so I won't bore you with our entire journey. But Vaidya, my last name means Ayurvedic doctor. I come from a legacy of 150 years of Ayurveda in my family. My grandfather and great grandfather were Ayurvedic doctors. The legacy of our business was not a business; it was an Ayurvedic clinic set up by my great grandfather. He at the time that he was sort of running his clinic, Ayurveda was still not mainstream. Allopathy ruled the roost because the British ruling India. And my grandfather graduated from college, as was customary at the time. He joined his dad. But in the 80s and 90s, he took this clinic to sort of much larger scale. So he used to see 300 patients a day. He had 250 plus patients on a weekly basis, trying to via post, which was the e-commerce of that time. And he didn't care for sales, distribution, marketing, strategy. He wanted as many patients to come to his clinic, so consultation was free. I was actually born with asthma. I suffered from juvenile bronchitis, and like most entrepreneurs, eventually the business stems from a personal problem. Right? So I grew up with juvenile bronchitis, and I wasn't allowed to play cricket or football growing up because there's too much dust on the field. I wasn't allowed to have Limca, Coke, Fanta, Sprite. Now you'll say that no one should be having those things, but when I was growing up, that's what we had at birthday parties. I didn't have ice cream growing up because it would jam my throat. And so I believed that I didn't have a normal childhood. And I got an Ayurvedic treatment very early on. My grandfather healed me for 14 years. By age 16, I was cured of asthma. And I was made captain of my school cricket team, which for me was a big deal. I didn't go to a school which cared for cricket so much. There weren't so many people who wanted to play. Our coach was a history teacher that we convinced to become our coach. But I think for me, it meant something, right? Because Ayurveda had given me back what I wanted to do. Had given me back my childhood. And so I became a believer in the science more than just family legacy and spent time with my grandfather, transcribed our family formulations from the scriptures to the computer. And then eventually I went to college in the US. My experience in the US actually opened the world for me, right? So I saw the natural organic products revolution in the US. Think about leaving India in 2009, it was a different world, right? I mean, forget plant-based, we didn't even hear the word natural, all natural, organic. We didn't have customers willing to pay more for that. So that was the India I left. I saw this store called Whole Foods and it blew my mind, right? Like hundreds of choices, thousands of customers paying top dollar for all those products. And I also saw something else in the US. I saw yoga being repackaged with yoga mats, yoga gyms, yoga apparel, Lululemon. I saw how what was traditional Indian had been repackaged and rebranded to appeal to modern consumers. And that really excited me as well, right? Because it had become a global phenomenon. And what was exciting was that something Indian was taken, modernized, and became a global phenomenon. What was not exciting was we didn't take it to the world, right? So I remember calling my grandfather from campus and saying, hey, it's amazing that yoga is global. It's not so amazing that India has nothing to do with it. And we can't let the same happen with Ayurveda. I came back to India in 2013 and I worked in a private equity fund called L Capital, now called L Carrington, investing in the consumer sector. Got to spend time with more than 150 entrepreneurs from the age of 21 to 24. Got a lot of exposure, but I saw three big changes in the Indian consumption story. I saw Indians happy to consume quintessentially Indian brands. So I grew up in India obsessed with imported products, and this is a relevant takeaway for all of you guys as well, because it's not specific to Ayurveda. Indians were happy to consume quintessentially Indian brands. What was the India I grew up in? If it was imported, it was good. If it was Indian, it was substantial. That had changed, right? Second thing was that hundreds of thousands of consumers had become interested in Ayurveda as a science, had become interested in natural, healthy, which didn't exist when I had left India. Government change, Ministry of Ayush was created, and so this entire health revolution was coming to India. And Ayurveda was one of the few sort of things that caught on initially, right? Now, with that, the other thing was that I was one of the youngest members of the team at that time of the fund, and so they said that spend time on this thing called e-commerce. Because you're young, you probably shop online as well. So I started spending time on this thing called e-commerce. At that time, it was a thing, and I remember my boss asking me at the time, "You think Indians will buy clothes online? Don't you have to try them on?" And the company we were talking about at that time was Vintra. Over the next few years, I saw things fundamentally change. Right, so I realized that e-commerce was not a fad; it was here to stay. This was the macro. From the micro. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed. And so I remember the promise I made him that I'd do something with the legacy and I'd ensure Indian companies take Ayurveda to the world. And so I quit my job at 24 and a half to take on this family legacy of Ayurveda and started this company called Dr. Vaidya to repackage and rebrand our family legacy and 5,000 years of science to appeal to modern consumers. Right? So that was the thought process behind the brand. We started offline like most brands started. At that time, 2016, D2C didn't exist as a term. Online only brands were sort of just far drawn concepts. And when we started offline, I had this big launch in the Taj Lands Hotel in Bombay. We had 300 people there. 6 distributors got excited. They signed on with us. We put 10 lakhs worth of stock in the market. And then eventually we got 9 lakhs worth of the stock back, right? And I think what was scary for me at the time was like I was a good student, I went to a good college, I had a good job out of college, and then I'd seen this big failure in my life, right? But good sense to real life. Reflected on that, I realized that I was really young. I didn't know offline markets. I was up against really large competition, Dabur, Himalayas, Zandu, Patanjali. And honestly, I had no right to win, right? And that's a big takeaway for me at that time, that customers are not going to automatically buy your product. You have to find the right to win. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was in the founding team at Nykaa, and I was sort of like distraught, right? And she said, "Look, nobody's building Ayurveda online. I've seen in my time at Nykaa. You've seen in your time as an investor investing in e-commerce. Nobody's building Ayurveda online." So we switched our business in November 2017. I convinced her to join. We got engaged. She joined the business, and from there, the online journey of Dr. Vaidya began. I still won't say D2C because that term didn't exist. Today it's like even my mom knows what D2C is, but and she didn't buy anything online until the pandemic. But at that time it didn't exist as a term, and so we spent a year learning online business, Facebook, Google, Shopify, advertising, customer service, operations, logistics. Took our website optimizeers.com from 0 to 50 orders a day. Today, you will say 50 orders a day, not such a big deal, doesn't seem like a big number. But at that time, in November 2018, 50 orders a day, single branded Ayurvedic website was a big deal. And I think from there, the great part about online business allows you rapid scale once you achieve product market fit. So in this 1 year, we realized who our customer was. We realized it wasn't an urban elite customer buying a hangover product. It was actually a tier 2, tier 3 customer who didn't have access to high quality Ayurvedic products and formulations. And the only reason we got this insight was because we got to speak to customers, right? I answered every customer call. I had the customer service phone. I used to take it on Sundays and answer all the calls. And from that, we realized there's a different TV we're talking to. We're talking to the Anantnag, Muzaffarnagar, Trichy, and Imphal customer who doesn't have an Ayurvedic doctor 2 kilometers away or 1 kilometer away. And so we changed the focus of the brand. We advertised in Hindi, we advertised in English, and we achieved rapid scale from there, right? So long story short, in the next 2 years, we went from 5,000 to 5,000 orders a day, reached 2 million plus transacting customers across 16,500 pin codes. We launched 80 products, raised a Series A from RPC Group, and in March of last year, we were one of the first few D2C exits, one of the first few D2C brands to be acquired. Since then, actually, I've been pretty active and involved in the ecosystem. So I've made more than 75 angel investments now. I have a podcast on D2C. I run a cohort-based course, India's largest cohort on D2C, and professionally actually teamed up with the folks at Volinvest to launch an early stage fund to invest in the consumer space. Volinvest, as some of you may know, is one of the largest consumer investors in the world. It's more than $3.5 billion in AUM, and also one of the largest shareholders in O3. And so actively involved in this sort of plant-based ecosystem. And yeah, I think we wanted to do more early stage investing. And so we set up this separate vehicle called Volinvest Ventures to partner with consumer businesses early on. We made our first 2 investments, not in brands, in the consumer tech space, but very actively involved in the early stage ecosystem and excited about what's happening in the plant-based ecosystem as well. We're seeing behavior change rapidly, right? If you take D2C as a corollary, right? My dad had never placed an order online. He's now placed more than 50 orders on Amazon, goes on his Instagram feed and shops. The way we eat is changing. The way we live our lives is changing. Right? You think about the India I left in 2009 to the India I've come back to. I'm gluten-free and sugar-free, and I go to restaurants and I see things on the menu, which I would have never envisioned would be there, right? So I think the way we are eating is much different. The way we're living is much more different. And so I think we're at the cusp of something really exciting in terms of the food and plant-based revolution as well. I think a lot of you guys on this call are leading that movement. And I would say that while some people say that it will take long to evolve and things move slowly, who would have ever thought that online only Ayurvedic brand would reach 60% of India's pin codes, right? And that's what we did. And so really, I mean, as we open up to questions, I think while I'm really biased, I genuinely believe that there is a space for insurgent brands. Consumers are becoming more conscious. As consumers are becoming more conscious, they care about not just the what, but the why and the how. And that's something that supports what each of us on this conversation want. I think my advice would be don't underestimate the Indian consumer. The consumer is much smarter than you think he or she is. And I think that we're operating in an economy which is really large, but we're also in a place now where Indian brands are ready to go global. Right? So we've seen few examples of this in the D2C ecosystem, whether it's Badam or the Ayurveda experience or Skillmatics, just scratching the surface. My dream was to take Ayurveda global and be the Indian brand. I was able to do it. I got caught up in building for India and the market was too large, so I didn't spend enough time on it. But I really believe that it is our time now, and whether it's in the Indian market, which is large enough to create really, really large brands and outcomes, and consumers have evolved and changed, or it's global. I think we are at the cusp of something really exciting. So I'll stop there, Devika, and maybe open up the questions. And yeah, happy to start.
Yeah, thanks so much for all that context, Arjun. I think it's super interesting that you were also at the cusp of something new, exciting, taking something very quintessentially Indian and making that global and online at a time when that wasn't the norm. So very interested to see your thoughts in a similar nascent sector like alt protein and what you have to say there. So we have a few questions that came in as part of the registration. So I'll just take a few of them. So as part of GFI India's work as well, in consumer insights and the research that we do, we've seen that in a country like India, what really works is an omni-channel strategy with multiple SKUs, especially in the food segment where there isn't a sort of hero category, so to say, as compared to the West, wherein you have your burgers or your sausages. So what would you say is the key to balancing between the different channels that are available to startups in India? And which channel to enter when, essentially?
Look, I would say that there are lots of channels available, right? Have as a consumer brand, let's take an example of a food brand. You have the online space through your own website, you have the online space through marketplaces, you have the offline space through modern trade, general trade, then you have the Horeca institutional channel, and then you now have this new channel called big commerce. Think about an early stage business. I would highly like guide you away from doing all six at one time. While it seems, and then you have the export channel, right? The biggest mistake I made in my first year doctorate is to try to do a little bit of everything. Your company that looks like 10% from here, 50% from here, 20% from here, 25% from here, 10% from there. If you have 6 people or 8 people, how are you able to manage so many, right? And so when Dr. Vaidya scaled, we actually scaled on the back of one channel, which was our own website. Now, which is right and which is wrong for you as you start, that's a question I may not be able to answer. And maybe because I went online first, I would advise to go online first and then go other channels. But look, cold chain, food products, low AOVs, high voluminous weights, maybe the world is different, right? So my advice would be actually crack one channel, right? Only once you crack that channel, you can go to sleep at night. When I could go to sleep at night saying that I will get at least 50 orders on my website. And so whatever happens other than this is bonus, that's when I could focus my energy on other channels. And so cracking one channel would be the first port of call for an early stage brand for me, because otherwise your helter-skelter mind is too many places you can't excel in one thing, right? That's the reason I brought on a co-founder as well. I wrote about it on LinkedIn. I was a 5-on-10 at everything I did in my business because I had supply chain, manufacturing, legal, compliance, procurement, sales, distribution, marketing, strategy, HR, IT, admin. I couldn't run all of these things well, and so I was like I'm not doing anything well, right? So I might as well focus on the few things I'm going to bring on my wife at that time who became a co-founder, but whoever it could be a co-founder, right? And so when you think of challenge, it's the same thought process, the same way of looking at it. Until you excel in one channel, there's no point going at this and trying 10, 15 different channels.
Fair enough. So bringing it back to, I guess, D2C, which is what everyone's here to listen about. We have discussed the benefits of D2C for a nascent sector like smart protein before, in terms of capturing instant consumer insights and feedback, as well as iterating on the same. But what do you think is particularly important when it comes to something as new as smart protein for a market that's not used to consuming the way that this new sector is presenting? And how do you think D2C would come into that picture?
Look, I'll give you the example of a brand called Caffeine, right? It's a caffeinated cosmetics brand. Now they launched in the first cohort of D2C brands like Dr. and Mama and Wow and Licious and more. Right? We're the early movers in the D2C space. Now, that's a seemingly small market, right? Like customers who want caffeine-based cosmetics in India. I mean, doesn't seem like the biggest. Can you hear me, Devika? Your screen is.
I think we lost you in between, Arjun.
Okay, am I back?
Yeah, you're back now.
So I was think about Caffeine, right? First cohort of D2C brands, seemingly small market, right, for caffeinated cosmetics. Now, if you went and launched in one city offline, you would only find those pockets of customers in that city that was interested in caffeinated cosmetics. But if you launched online, you actually got those 20 customers from Bombay, those 10 customers from Delhi, those 15 customers from Bangalore, those 8 customers from Hyderabad, all aggregated in one place, right? And so I think as we're moving into the sector, what online allows you is to aggregate demand and reach a larger set of consumers which may be dispersed. What's the challenge with online and for D2C, right? Food products, usually lower AOVs or lower price points. You've got to bundle a bunch of stuff together. Higher volumes and cold chain, right? These are the challenges that you have that I want to have, right? And so I think the way to solve for this is actually leveraging of two different things, either using the quick commerce now, using the Zeptos and Blinkits and Instamarts of the world. But you can't get into those, right? There are now enablers like ZFW and I'm an investor, which allow you to have Instamart-like or Amazon Prime-like fulfillment for a D2C brand as well, which allows you to place your stock in multiple warehouses across the country. So it reaches consumers fast and also solves for your sort of voluminous logistics problem plus the cold chain issue. So I think that there are challenges with the online business for smart protein, but doing it online allows you to de-leverage yourself from the risks of expiry and returns from stores when the customer base is currently dispersed. And there are now obviously enablement tools to allow you that.
Got it. And I think that brings us to our next question, which is essentially around the challenges that you mentioned. This is something that we got a lot of questions around on the cold chain and logistics front. So are there any workarounds that you would say right now in as dispersed a market as you mentioned India is for some of these challenges like cold chain?
Yeah, look, I would say in cold chain there are now startups coming up, right? Like I was speaking to a startup recently called Celsius that started solving this problem. And they work with some of the smart protein brands already. So I think that's one good one to look at. From a logistics standpoint, there's much of these quick commerce enablers coming up, which could be also relevant to engage with and have a conversation with. And I think the other thing I would say is that it's not only your problem, right? It's not only a challenge of the smart protein sector. There's lots of food products that need cold chain, right? Whether it's an ice cream or other kinds of food products as well. And so I would say like track their growth journeys as well and see the way they are doing it, and you can sort of find corollaries that can be used for business.
Got it. And in terms of finding the right set of supply chain partners, like you mentioned, right? A lot of these companies that are doing these logistics is newer brands who are just getting into the space. What do you think you should be looking for when you're looking for these ecosystem partners that you can really trust?
So look, I think the word you said is partner, right? And so that's the most important thing. I think where we did something right at Dr. Vaidya's was we didn't say vendor, we only said partner. So I was so happy when like 3 weeks ago, my largest raw material supplier sent me an email saying, hey, I was inspired by you at Brown University in the US. And so I like pushed my daughter to apply to college in the US and she got a full ride to Carnegie Mellon. And yeah, I'm so happy and thank you for inspiring
I think
her.
we lost you again, Arjun. There's a...
maybe it's your internet actually because I'm in full Wi-Fi.
Okay, great. Then it must be mine. Go ahead.
The screen is freezing as well a few times.
Okay.
So yeah, I was thinking like we had this raw material supplier who I don't work with any longer because I've sold the business, who said, I was inspired by your journey going to college in the US, and so I convinced my daughter to apply to college outside of India. She got a full ride to Carnegie Mellon. And it's 1 year since we worked together, but we still have that relationship when interacting in the way. And so I think that whoever you're working with, look for a partnership because there will be tough times, right? And there will be requirements you have that may not be in the ready offering of that partner or vendor. And so when you're looking at ecosystem partners, I would say really spend time with them, explain to them your vision, and see if they genuinely care. Because if they care, then they spend more time on and actually find new customer solutions. But startups usually are open, right? So we find a early stage business and they are also excited and they also want to grow.
Got it. And there were a couple of questions around the economics of all of this. Like if you are a new brand coming into it, how much should you be investing in customer acquisition and retention and marketing? You mentioned that try to get one channel right at the start. So if you are putting all your energies into establishing D2C, what would you say that should look like for like a new startup?
Look, I think it's difficult to say what the benchmark or template will be. What I will say is just follow a simple unit economics template. What is unit economics? Is your per order P&L. So you'll have an MRP value of your product. Then you discount your product, so you get your net realization, right? From your net realization, you have to cut your cost of goods and your tax to give you your eventual gross margin, right? So I give you your sort of net realization on a gross margin basis. Then there are three levers below that, right? There is a logistics and a packaging cost. There's a payment gateway and maybe a COD charge, and there's a marketing or customer acquisition cost, right? So your gross margin minus these three costs, logistics and packaging, payment gateway and COD, and your customer acquisition cost, your marketing cost, gives you your contribution margin. Every day as a founder, I would look at this and ensure that at least break even or make money on the first order, because if you break even or make money on the first order and you believe in your product, your customer will come back. And so you make a lot of money on the second, third, and fourth order. You have limited or no marketing cost on acquisition. Let's say I buy you as a customer and you like my product, you will come back and you will buy me 5 times, 6 times. I bought my wife's lenses from Infart for 24 months now and I've spent more than 1 lakh rupees. Right? So whether they acquired me at 5,000, 2,000, 3,000 or 1,000 rupees becomes irrelevant because I spent so much money. So as long as your unit economics template looks break even or a little bit of money on the first order, and you believe your product quality is good enough for your customer to come back, you're in a good place. And if your product quality is not good, you have a whole new set of problems. Good enough product quality is the bare minimum to start engaging with customers. So I think that's how we look at sort of the economics and unit economics. Unit economics, like in our cohort, we tell all our learners, like every day you run your business, look at your unit economics template.
It's good advice right there. And in terms of building your brand in this space, are there any insights? You mentioned pharma and wellness being a sort of related field to smart protein. Are there any sort of marketing strategies that you think or insights that you think could be applied to smart protein from your experience in pharma and wellness?
Yeah, look, Ayurveda online was new when I started, right? And so I think there is a little bit of hand-holding you have to do to a customer to simplify the offering. What you may know about your product, the customer may not understand. Right? And so simple communication, simple packaging, simple branding, educational sessions, going on Insta Lives, asking customer questions, debunking myths. I think all of these things really helped us as we build a brand because we simplified the offering of Ayurveda. So I think smart protein is at the space that Dr. Vaidya was online in 2017, and lots of education is required. As long as you're taking the customer along for the ride and holding their hand through the process, you should be good.
Lastly, there's also a question around how do you navigate the different kind of platforms that are currently available to startups in this space, be it e-commerce platforms. Any insights there as to any sort of prioritization or what you should be looking for in terms of a fit for your product in terms of channels?
Yeah, look, I would say prioritization wise, it's very clear if it's a food-based brand, you'll focus on maybe an Amazon and then the big baskets and the Smarts and Zeptos and Blinkits of the world, like food-based platform. That would be your first port of call your go-to. But I'm a big fan of going deep rather than going wide. And so really build relationship, understand how products that do well on the platform work, what your listing should look like, what's the optimal marketing strategy on that platform. Are you supposed to do marketing for them, or are you supposed to market inside their platform? Spend time with your category managers. When my category manager didn't want to meet me, I just checked into the hotel opposite the Amazon office in Bangalore, and I said, I'm here for the whole day. If you have 5 minutes, I'm just like 1 minute walk across the street. I'll come and meet you anytime. And then eventually we built a very close relationship. Right? Those are the people inside that you need to that know the platform better than you. So spend time to build that relationship because each of these platforms is now very, very large, right? So the problem of demand not existing is a 2016 problem. That problem is solved. There's lots of demand. Now the customer has to choose your brand over the 10, 20 other brands available on that platform. And so for you to stand on that platform, that's what you want to keep in mind.
Got it. And in terms of like a nascent sector like smart protein, while there is demand, like you mentioned, there is value in kind of promoting the category as a whole as opposed to just your brand, because there is a general lack of category awareness. So where do you think startups should achieve that kind of balance between promoting the sector as a whole as well as pushing for your own brand?
I think it's a tough one. Money is limited, and so while you may educate customers on the sector, you can't do it endlessly, and that's why folks like you exist and you're advocating for the sector. But I would say education on product may be an easier thing. Like I'm a early stage brand doing 5-10 lakh rupees a month, and I do a 5 lakh rupee campaign talking about smart protein. Probably not, right? Maybe I can talk about my product, but then they're dependent on folks like. So I think it's a fine balance, but I would focus on product more than category from very early stage.
Got it. I think we can open it up for live Q&As if there are any. We'd love to take them now. In the meantime, just as like a curiosity, say question not from D2C, but at Whirlinvest, how are you seeing this alt protein sector right now? Are you building a thesis around it? If there's anything that you can share on that, would be super interesting.
For us at Whirlinvest, there's no need to build a thesis, right? Because we've been part of the OT journey for a long time. So I think we're excited about it. I must have spoken to at least 10 or 15 brands who are building India about the space. I think we're at the early stage still, lots of things to solve for, but I'm very excited.
Good to know. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat, Nicole.
No, I don't see any.
So my internet is a little laggy. So Nicole, if there are any questions, just let me know.
I don't see any. I'm seeing the chat.
All right. All right, I think there's one more questions. So companies like the Live Green Co. Have been leveraging ancient sciences like Ayurveda, which you're aware of. So do you think there are other market gaps in the global market that India can sort of plug into like this?
Let me just read the question. Yeah, look, I think there's lots of advantages from India, right? Whether it's like our flavors, our products, our price advantage, our manufacturing advantage. So many advantages we have in our country. So yeah, I think Ayurveda is just one of them. I see one more question. Shagun's asking what would be your advice for a food brand just starting out? I think like there's lots of action in the space. So I would say look for something with a moat with defensibility that's unique. And then like I say to most founders, the best way to start is to start. Because until you start, you don't know what your customer wants. Right? So instead of spending a lot of time philosophizing, just start.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of the session. This was super fun and interesting for us to just understand your background and how you see the sector and how smart protein can really plug into the D2C ecosystem. And I'm sure that this will definitely become a standing resource that we plug with a lot of our stakeholders who often come with us with the queries that we addressed today.
Super. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thanks for having me. Take care, guys. Bye.
All right. Thank you.